coffee. All right, teammates, we are back once again. If this is your first time listening to the Move Swiftly podcast, welcome to the #1 show on innovative teamwork. Great to have you. Looking forward to having you back for some more. To my regular listeners, you hit the play button. You know what happens. You know what you did to yourself. You know the expectation. You know exactly the way it goes down here. Whatever the challenge is, whatever the obstacle is, whatever the roadblock you may feel like is in your way, we are here to indirectly tell you you are not going through it alone. Today is a very, very rewarding day for me because myself, I will admit to you guys, I know I've been trying to weed myself out, but I still consider myself a coffee drinker. All right, I know I've done certain things to where I'm not at 7 cups a day, but I do make sure I get a couple cups of coffee in a day. And today
Excellent.
I have Kevin Hartley, the founder of Cambio Coffee, who, like I tell you, represents, like I tell you all the time, and like I've told you in previous shows, when it comes to being in business, it requires, to be successful in business, it does require a very philanthropic mindset. It requires you having the heart, a big heart. It requires you actually really wanting to do some good in the world and doing some good for people, because he was able to tap into a concept in which with the coffee that you drink in your Keurig is now being able to be, not only is it better coffee, first of all, but it's also in a situation where you're able to recycle the actual thing that the coffee comes in, and it actually is being put to good use and is being recycled into the world. So all that being said, Calvin, welcome to the show, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me so much. I'm excited.
Yes, I'm excited to have you on, man, because one of the things, and as I was listening to your story, I remember it kind of took me back to when I was reading Howard Schultz's book, Onward, right? And he
Yes.
described it. It's a great book, great book. Highly recommend you guys go read it. He describes and he's the founder of Starbucks, if you don't know, but he describes like when he walked into a coffee shop in Seattle, I think he was, the service was so well, it was like he was enthralled with it. That was a specific word he used. And if you were to go to a Starbucks now, you would feel enthralled. You'll see great murals of, farmers and the beans and everything like that. And you actually kind of have I'm not going to call you Howard Schultz or anything like that, but you have a similar story in regards to, you were part of Green Mountain. You were doing a lot of great things. And then as a way of getting out of the business, you tapped into a concept that I would love for you to kind of dive into a little bit more, and we can just I'll just let you go. I'll just let you talk, man, because there's a lot we're gonna get into today. I already see it.
Okay, that's awesome. And again, thanks so much for having me. This is great.
Mhm.
So, helicoptering back up your notion about being philanthropic and being in business and being a good thing.
Mhm.
So, I first heard the term triple bottom line in 1994.
Mhm.
And that means you have not only a bottom line for profit because you have to survive as a business,
Mhm.
but you also have a bottom line, a figurative bottom line for people and a figurative bottom line for the planet.
Wow.
And our when Ann and I spend our own money investing and starting brands, we only do triple bottom line ideas that, yes, we're trying to compete on the national stage successfully, which we'll talk about,
Yes.
but we're also trying to make a huge impact on people and the planet and everything we do, so that our customers can align their values with their purchases, basically.
Mhm.
And then we like to think of ourselves as being one of the many thousands points of light that we help change the world through business,
Yes.
change the world through capitalism. And
Yes.
that's kind of the overarching story of what turns us on. And you made a really interesting point that I just wanted to add to about it can be seen as part of business. And
Yep.
what's interesting about that to us is when you humans are funny. And one of the attributes from 200,000 years of development since Homo sapien first appeared on the planet is
Mhm.
that we like to work for causes that are bigger than ourselves.
Mhm.
And when you're doing a triple bottom line businesses and it's legit and it's transparent, you attract really interesting customers and you attract really interesting employees.
Yeah.
And it turns into that sort of symbiotic
Yep.
effect that can be quite exciting.
Yeah.
And then, did you want me to just share a little of my background and how we got here, or?
Yeah. Well, before you go though, that actually is the first time I've heard triple bottom line as well.
Mm,
So you just taught me something, and it's amazing because I think like that. But when you think, you always hear the term win-win, but when you say
yes.
triple bottom line, that does open up a completely different door for your business, especially if you have a good heart, if you have a conscience, if you really are going about it and wanting to help people and believing in the product, believing in the service. That's where it has to start. All of this stuff is working within, guys. And this is what I constantly
And
reinforce to you guys as well. Because, well,
yeah,
I'll let you go for a second, but
yeah.
when it comes to how you found it though, when it comes to your experience at Green Mountain specifically, were there things that were going on that were tugging on you and Ann's heartstrings that made it so you wanted to take the lessons that you were learning and then say, we got to do something, we got to do something to get ourselves out of this and then build this on our own.
Yeah. So the business side of the story is
Hmm.
I started doing work with a little coffee company in Vermont called Green Mountain Coffee Roasters with a wild and crazy entrepreneur named Bob Stiller.
Yeah.
And he started Green Mountain Coffee in a little coffee shop in Sugarbush, Vermont. And he sold a company called Easy Wider Rolling Papers when he was 28.
Mm.
And he, in theory, you can use tobacco and Easy Wider rolling papers,
Yeah.
but and then he retired at this ski area in Sugarbush, and the coffee shop was going out of business, and they agreed he sold it for $8 million when he was 28, and this was in the 80s. And
Wow.
the coffee shop owners and he agreed he would buy an antique coffee roaster, and then they would split the profits.
Hmm.
Well, then as fast forward, and we bought a little company called Keurig that does K cups,
Yeah.
and in mid 2005 2006, and then as we were scaling it, you guys, this is amazing. This is pinch me fun. And Green Mountain Coffee, we gave 5% of profits to environmental causes,
Hmm.
from river cleanups to food insecurity issues, and that was really cool. But a K-cup manufacturing line costs about $5 or $8 million and is about the size of a small house. We
Right.
had to install one somewhere every 10 business days in North America for more than 4 years to keep up with the demand.
Oh my.
And today, you and I were just talking about off camera, but today the US is going to drink 20 billion of these little K cups,
Right.
which in the world's greatest brands, this happens to be a Starbucks one,
Hmm.
which is amazing, except plastics aren't actually recyclable. So more than 40 million a day end up in a landfill or ocean.
Right.
And coffee farming families struggle with food insecurity more than 6 months a year.
Right.
Um, and you know what's interesting, Aswan, when most Americans hear coffee farm, they
Yeah.
think amber fields of waving grain and John Deere tractors and bliss and swimming in the creeks. A
Right.
coffee farm is not that. The Arabica beans are grown around the equator at 3,000 feet of elevation and above. And a coffee farm is a small open air dwelling, normally with a couple of families. And the quote farm is between 2 to 4 acres. And they live on between $1 and $3 a day.
Oh my.
So the tragedy of plastics not getting recycled and ending up in oceans and landfills and coffee farming families starving was after we sold Keurig, we had a $13.8 billion exit 6 years ago.
Hmm.
And after our non-compete was over, Ann and I assembled a dream team to reimagine the iconic K cup for the next 25 years and to
Right.
solve those two intractable problems or work on solving them with the triple bottom line mentality.
So walk us through a little bit about the logistics of getting this done because you
Mm,
walked us through a whole lot, from the acquisition of K cups. All right. You have these little cups. And like I was telling you before we started recording, I live out here in South Florida. My family is from Trinidad. I actually went to Trinidad a couple months ago for a family
mm,
reunion. And one of the things that I noticed in the ocean, like the water in which people are going to have fun, the beaches, it's filled with plastic. I mean, disgusting. A
it
lot of
is.
a lot of the things that you just displayed. And when it comes to actually, I remember talking to my mom. I was like, when it comes to actually finding someone that cares about this stuff, there's actual trucks dumping the plastic in water. I mean, for to show you some of the places that Miami has, it's absolutely crazy. what were the logistics for you to say, okay, I have this company, I bought it, but then all of a sudden I'm going to switch everything to aluminum, and I'm going to know the right material to get to the right person, and then make
Wow.
sure that has to be a long, strenuous process.
Yeah, that's like a huge cool question.
Yeah.
So plastics, whether it's K-cups or any food packaging,
Mhm.
it's cheap to produce and it does its job well. Unfortunately, in the US, and this is the problem you were articulating that you saw, and it's visible where you were, it's super visible in Bali and Sumatra and places like that. Unfortunately, in the US, when we throw plastics of any kind into the curbside bin, only 3% of the time they turn into another product. So 90, even the ones we throw in the bin,
Yeah. Like you're
97% of the
talking about
time
a
about
recycling bin, right?
the curbside
Like
recycling
when you
bin.
actually do what you are.
When you actually do what you're supposed to,
Yeah.
I mean, you know, when you actually do what you're supposed to,
Right.
most of the time they're just take another truck ride to a landfill or
Mhm.
the ocean where they
Right.
last hundreds of thousands of years. Um, so uh, as we after we sold Keurig and started the brand Cambio, which
Right.
is now the fastest growing K-cup brand in the US,
Hmm.
one of the things we had to get our arms around, which gets back to your question, is so how do we solve that plastics problem? Because we can't ask the consumer to buy a new machine.
Hmm.
We can't ask her or him to suffer in worse quality coffee. We can't ask them to pay a ton more. So you go, holy heck, like how are you going to solve that? So
Hmm.
we started on a multi-year, multi-million-dollar development project and looked at every material that would work effectively in a Keurig. And one of the challenges is with the new K cup, it has to be able to retain the freshness of the coffee for a long time because you're not roasting it and drinking it in the coffee shop. It
Exactly.
like roasts, it gets packed, it goes into Target, it stays on the shelf. The consumer brings it home. It has to last
And the last.
beautifully through that whole process. So there are a variety of materials we looked at, and we settled on aluminum, and we worked with brilliant partners in Austria and Germany. And aluminum is often referred to as the magic metal. And you guys on the podcast, I'm showing you the first and only patented ever in the planet aluminum K cup for your Keurig.
Hmm.
And I was going to say why people call it the magic metal, which is really
Right.
exciting. The first is, unlike plastic, you won't believe this, you guys. Unlike plastic, when we throw it in this curbside recycle bin, aluminum in the US, 95% of the time it ends up as another product.
Wow.
Baseball bat, Airstream trailer, Diet Coke can,
Hmm.
coffee pod, you name it. So
Wow.
that keeps 40 million a day out of landfills. Aluminum is also revered as the magic metal because the molecule is incredibly stable and you can recycle the material hundreds of times and it's as good as new.
Hmm.
Plastic degrades every time you recycle it. And it's actually more expensive to use recycled resin. Aluminum's way cheaper with the
Hmm.
recycled molecule.
Wow.
So that started us off on the huge development project of, okay, wow, bam. I
Yeah,
mean, now,
that's a big discovery. And just to pause you there for a second, because
mhm.
listeners, I don't want you guys to brush over what he just said. When you are on a mission, when you have a goal, when it's something that you really want to do, it's on you to do the research. All right. I think just figuring that one discovery out and knowing the
Mm,
numbers and knowing the fact that, hey, that plastic's not likely going to actually end up being recycled anywhere. And then thinking about what the numbers are, that kind of puts you in a place now where it's like, okay, as long as we can do my part. I'm not going to fix the world. We're not going to, stop everything. But if I can do my part and promote this specific thing, now somebody else can come and pick up on the next innovation and the next innovation and the next innovation. And also, too, another point is you're not asking customers to just dump their Keurig machines. You're not doing that. And you're actually doing something that's like, look, I'm not asking you to dump it. Just use this small thing, implement it, and then bang, we'll rock it out from there.
yeah, just fantastic points. Yes, yes, yes.
Right. But anyway, I'd cut you off. So, all right, the big thing is though, when you do make this discovery, now we have to deal with resistance, and I'm not gonna I'm trying my best not to bring up politics in this, but I do think it's going to be kind of necessary because you mentioned money. You mentioned, if I'm the person that's buying in bulk, or if I'm the grocery store that's buying a bunch of these and I need to put them on my shelves, I'm not necessarily worried about the environment. I'm worried about cutting costs and getting this off my shelves and selling it. So how do you, once you make this discovery and you actually make the product, how do you now go about, moving from that resistance and say, hey, this is the better product, even if it's going to cost a little more. Hey, think about the way you're saving the environment. How are you able to manage those discussions?
Yeah, so really another fascinating question.
Right.
So in business, when you have your own money or your investors' money on the line,
Oof, yeah,
eventually the customer has to like your product and has to enjoy it and buy it,
yeah,
or the whole thing's a moot.
yeah.
So we think about it in a phrase that I'm sure you have used many times with your listeners, which is product market fit,
Yes, sir.
the bundle of benefits.
Hmm.
So the way we started our project, and this is the way we started our project was a very sophisticated piece of research with Keurig consumers, which are now 43.5 million households
Mm.
in the US use Keurig as their coffee system.
Yeah, even well, I
And
teach
we
at a school, and I mean it's all over the school now. I mean, we
perfect.
one
So we'll have to
upstairs,
get them
one
some.
upstairs,
We'll have
right?
to get them some Cambio.
Yeah, you definitely will. I'm gonna have to make sure.
We'll afterwards we'll hook them up. So
Yes.
we know the guy. So
Uh-huh.
the research was very clear that with talking product market fit or bundle of benefits, 21% of existing Keurig customers are a market segment called the hopeful life balancer. And she's hopeful because she's leaning into people and planet values with her purchases.
Hmm.
But she's called a life balancer because she's not chaining herself to nuclear power plants. She's a normal person taking her kids to school in the suburban, but
Right.
she's trying to buy products that she feels good about. That for her, there was not a K cup brand that met her needs, that was entrepreneur led, that gave profits back to coffee farmers. There was 100% organic coffees that had a recyclable pod. And
Yeah.
so we said, holy mackerel, if we can create her dream K cup brand, it's going to move off the shelf.
Hmm.
And then to your listeners, that research has a double whammy benefit.
Yeah.
You know who to precision craft your brand for,
Hmm.
and it's a data-driven story you can tell your retail consumers and the people who or your retail customers, Target, Walmart, Kroger, because they're not just going to take anybody in.
Yes.
And you can help them understand with data. Hey, 21% of your customers, guys, are thinking of leaving the Keurig system because of single-use plastics,
Uh-huh.
and this is the only solution. So
Yeah.
it's that double whammy. When you really understand your target customer, you can precision craft something that makes her socks go up and down, which means she'll buy it. And you can use that same insight
Hmm.
to help sell it into the channels. And that's how we thought about what we needed to do with the brand. For example, our profit sharing, which I know we're going to talk to, it turned out it really mattered to this consumer.
Hmm. All right, so before we get to the profit shared element, because that's actually another fascinating element to the business as well. I do have to make sure I emphasize the importance of finding your target and knowing your avatar and only talking to them. All right, in business,
Wow.
and I have been a victim of this. I know with social media and with the amount of conversations and the amount of things we can go, it is very easy to get distracted and kind of sideswipe. I've been there, I know that, but I actually hired a coach myself, and one of the things that he would always talk about is how Target, and because you mentioned Target, but Target actually has an avatar that they call, I believe, Stacy.
Mm-hmm.
The typical mom that is gonna go shopping, this, that, and the third. But anyway, there was a person who was pitching their product to Target, and the Target execs was basically saying, Stacy wouldn't like this, Stacy wouldn't like that, Stacy wouldn't like. He's like, I'm tired of talking. Like, why don't we just get Stacy in here? And he's like, no, that's not an actual person. We're just talking. That's our avatar.
Love it.
Chris,
Love it.
I heard that story. I've had it in my mind too. John Vassos, he was my youth football coach, and he was the one that was responsible for all the money. And I always now in my mind, I'm like, okay, that's my avatar whenever I'm talking to people. So when you do that and you actually give your avatar, give your ideal client a specific name, a lot of these things are going to clear up for you. Like the roadway clears up for you.
That,
Very
that's
important.
so funny. We call ours Hope, the hopeful
Hope,
life balancer, but
the
we shorten
hopeful
it
life.
to
Yeah.
Hope.
So,
And building on that, there's a great quote that I can't have nothing to do with, but I love,
mhm,
which is in business and product development. When you're trying to be everything to everybody, you end up being nothing to nobody,
you will.
which
Yeah,
is the same way of saying what you just said,
yeah,
which is who are you particularly trying to wow and amaze? And
yeah,
if someone else buys it, great, it's not illegal.
yeah,
But
exactly.
there's a funny story like my dad was not a super nice guy, and he wouldn't he and in addition to that,
Mhm.
he wouldn't have bought an expensive wristwatch to save three people's lives. But if you tried to build a wristwatch for him, he'd opine as to what it should do, the
Yeah,
expensive one, but he's never going to buy it. So that's just noisy data, and you're trying to be something to him, which no, no,
exactly.
no. Go talk to people who are trying to show off with their wrist and
Yep.
find out what they're into.
Yeah.
Or for me, for Cambio, talking with people who don't really care about the planet and don't really care about coffee farmers and aren't that excited about organic coffee, that's great. It doesn't, I mean, that's fine. It's legal, right?
Right.
But we can't listen to them to decide what we should do, which is your point.
Mhm.
Who's your avatar? What are you doing to be unique, different, better, and special to them?
And when you get that, that's all you do. I mean, it clears up so much for
Oh,
you. It clears up so because I could only imagine what you and Ann are thinking when you first start this. It's just like because you know the business, you know what it takes to actually get coffee from the farm to the so if you took it and you had the mindset of I'm gonna have to reinvent the wheel, it's like I don't even know if you get started. But if you take it, we're gonna make this tiny little thing for that specific person. And then the next point I want to make sure we don't brush over is
yeah.
the research. You found one thing in your research that said this specific one loophole for the people that use Keurig, one piece of research, and then that was able to create an entire brand that opened up in a huge door. So, folks, if you are not listening for your research or during your research papers and you don't take your research papers seriously, I hope you are starting to realize how important doing your homework, doing your research is because it can be that one fact, that one thing you find that creates an entire brand for you that you would have never realized with just one loophole.
Yeah. Can I insert
Yeah,
another
yeah,
little
go ahead.
quick thought,
Yeah, go ahead.
which is we did a bunch of work with a famous marketing strategy professor named Dr. Kevin Clancy, who unfortunately is no longer with us.
Mhm.
And this was published in Harvard Business Review. But we looked at thousands of new product offerings that were brought to the world in consumer packaged goods, which means center store groceries, so deodorants and potato chips and sodas and coffee, et cetera. We
Right.
call that CPG, consumer packaged goods. 95% of new products and service offerings failed.
90% failed, right?
95% failed.
Failed, right.
Done by Procter and Gamble and Unilever and Frito-Lay. I'm just great, and PepsiCo, crazy.
Mhm.
So we looked at the research and we uncovered two quick problems, which your listeners might find really helpful. One was the company had an idea to launch something, but the customer wasn't very excited.
Yeah.
And that's like clear cola. You're too young to remember Coke Clear or Pepsi Clear, probably. But the
Okay.
idea was a clear cola. And the consumer kept saying, yeah, but colas are brown. And Pepsi and Coke kept saying, no, no, don't you get it? It's a clear cola. And they spent hundreds of millions of dollars and launched it, and it failed.
Oh
So
God.
problem number one is you wanted to have do the product, but
Because
your avatar isn't that excited.
yeah.
Number two reason, and there are only two, is that you actually had a great idea, but by the time it died the death of 1,000 paper cuts,
Mm-hmm.
when it got to the market, it didn't work. An example of that was Gerber, the baby food company,
Mm-hmm.
uncovered a huge need for ready to eat adult food. Were in these beautiful prepackaged meals and amazing. But by the time they got it to market, what they did was they just repackaged the mushed up baby food in an adult graphics, and it
Mm-hmm.
failed.
Yep.
So
Exactly. And well, the thing is, when you have these companies that have so much money, they can do that. That's why, again, I'm so for the entrepreneurs, so for the people that are actually making a difference, and which is what inspired the work I do now. And that actually brings up to the final point I wanted to talk to you about is the profit sharing model that you created. And you already kind of hit on this when you talked about
mm,
the farmers making only $1 a day. I myself come from a smaller island where I see the people that are struggling. I mean, we were actually there, and they're taking the coconuts off, they're cutting it up, and then they're selling it themselves and all that, you know. So speak to a little bit about what went into your profit sharing model and how you're able to kind of kick some back to the farmers that are actually doing the hard labor.
Yeah. So part of the perspective, the worldview, the POV we have with triple bottom line
Mm-hmm.
is you've probably heard the phrase greenwashing before, which is a
Yeah.
brand or a company will make an environmental claim and they might be doing a teeny little bit, but it's not the centerpiece of their strategy.
Right. A lot of it
Um,
is just a lot of just for marketing purposes.
just, yeah, right. And again,
It's all that,
if they're donating to a nonprofit and stuff, any of that is good. It's just not centerpiece
yeah.
to their strategy. We feel very differently that we're hoping to, if you sell tens of millions or hundreds of millions of K cups, we're hoping that the consumer, not hoping, she loves the coffee, but she also loves how the coffee makes her feel. And this hope, our target customer, our avatar,
Mm-hmm.
cares way more deeply about supply chain, sustainability, and real people than a generic consumer, let's just say. And it
Yeah.
was really interesting, Aswan, in the research, we found that she said to us over and over again, I'm looking for brands that have values that I have with my own children.
Mm,
And we went, wow, what an insight.
that is,
And we said, so what if we do, 1% for the planet like people do? Or what if we do,
mm-hmm.
you know, and we kept ratcheting up in the research. And her sweet spot was we know you need to survive. Otherwise, you don't do any good if only your mother's drinking one K cup a year. Then who cares what you donate? So we settled with our target consumers on 20% of our profits, go
Yeah.
back to 10,000 struggling coffee farming families. So as we grow and hit our target, 60,000 less people a year will
Mm-hmm.
suffer food insecurity.
Right. Now, when you talk about the struggling farmers, how do you go about making sure that the money actually gets to them?
Oh, yeah, great. So killer question. So we're when Anne and I visit around the world coffee farms, we're normally the only Americans and people with this skin color that they've seen.
Mm-hmm.
And so sometimes we've dropped in on little schools and we showed on maps where we flew in from,
Because
and we have to use interpreters,
give
because
me
it's
a
so
good
fun.
quick geography lesson.
Right. Yeah, just so like just when and you or I see something that's just out of our worldview, like holy
Yeah.
mackerel, how fun.
Well, it's funny,
So
but the school I teach at in Palm Beach is called the Center for Creative Education, and we do
oh,
collaborations with schools. So, I mean, countries, and they'll come here and they speak the language. And actually, we have a ton of cool things planned. So well, like I said, we'll connect after this. But
oh,
yeah,
perfect.
it's really
Perfect.
great when you're able to do that because to me that's such a big thing. That's why I actually like when the kids see that there's something outside of themselves, outside of just skin color, outside of just gender, then we're actually doing something that needs to be done. You know, that is the key element.
Good on you. Yeah, if the world all shared that view, we'd be a lot better place.
Oh my goodness, I'm telling
100%. So then Anne and I, as the brand gets successful, we don't have the ability to adjudicate around the world
you. Hmm.
which particular farm should get it and which shouldn't.
Right.
And we're both from Vermont, the home of Ben and Jerry's and the home of Seventh Generation and Green
Mhm.
Mountain Coffee, and very philanthropic oriented place.
Yeah.
And friends of ours started a nonprofit called Food for Farmers, food with the number four and then farmers. Their only mission is coffee farming, food sustainability issues, and they
Right.
work around the globe with that. And they have a 4% administrative fee, so 96%. You can't have a zero one, but
Right.
so 96% of the dollars to Food for Farmers goes directly to the projects with the farmers and
Okay.
with the co-ops.
Yes.
And so until we're huge and we have like head of sustainability or somebody,
Yeah. Mhm.
that's how we chose to bridge it and adjudicate where the dollars go.
And there you go again, fella. Again, this is why teamwork is such a big thing out here. It's you have the right friends and the food for farmers again. same mission as you, know the avatar, didn't try to do too much. And for you guys to, again, to align with that, then you're able to run the organization and the funnels go right exactly where they need to go. So much of this is about letting go of you being able to try to do everything on your own and
Oh,
collaborating and collaborating and collaborating with people. And that to me is such a big, such a key part to growth and development and all that kind of stuff. So, I do want to be very respectful of your time. Can you just tell
I love
people a
it.
little bit about how they get in touch with you, how they can reach out? What's the best way of connecting with you?
Yes. So if you want to just check out the company, the website is cambioroasters.com.
Mm-hmm.
Cambio roasters.com. And we're of course on Amazon. And then my email is kevin@cambioroasters.com.
Got it. So that will also be included in the show notes as well. So Kevin, the final thing I do to close out all the shows is I want you to use your imagination a little bit. You are back in Green Mountain. You are, seeing some things. You are working. Obviously, you like coffee and all that, but there's just something tugging at your heartstrings, feeling like you have to do more. I want you to pretend that that version of Kevin has come into the Zoom room. Give him some words of encouragement, and we will officially close.
So the words of encouragement, Kevin talking to Kevin. I think a huge part of our humanness is to create, and a lot of our legacies are what we chose to build.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would urge Kevin to think of his business as his own personal art project, not the art of business, which is just doing what everyone else does, but a little better, but that you're trying to build a company, a product, a brand, a mission, a culture, and a team that's galleryable in a business art gallery. And
Hmm.
things are going to go really, really well. And then I would finish with, we always say, one, I agree with you, nobody can do everything themselves, including me.
Mm-hmm.
And so we always say, one team, one dream.
One team, one dream, man. That's it. I actually have nothing else to add to that. Absolutely nailed it, man. All right. Again, if you're a first time listener here, you already know. I mean, I'll tell you now, the reason I close out with that question, because if I described your situation going into it, the promise here is always to give you guys something indirectly to help you through whatever challenge you may be going through at this particular moment. Regular listeners already know this is how we roll on the show. So, all that being said, fellow teammates, continue to move swiftly. We will talk more soon.